Hi everyone, this is Carla Adkins, and in this short presentation I'll be sharing my evolving understanding of evidence-based practice, or EBP, in occupational therapy. Over time and through experience and recent readings, my concept of EBP has changed. I'll talk about how I used to view EBP, what I've come to understand now, and the challenges I've encountered throughout my career. What I think can help us move forward as a profession as well. Let's start by looking at my current view of what EBP means to our profession and how it impacts our work. Evidence-based practice, or EBP, is a systematic approach to decision making that relies on the best available evidence. This includes peer-reviewed research, clinical expertise, client feedback, and real-world outcomes. The goal is to reduce bias and provide care that is informed, effective, and ethical. But in my own experience, EBP can sometimes feel restrictive or difficult to apply in everyday practice. Much of the available literature focuses on ideal settings that don't always reflect the realities we face as clinicians. And there often isn't enough strong research to support the techniques we use daily. That's why I see EBP as something broader, not just rooted in research, but also grounded in practitioner judgment and client-centered care. For EBP to truly work, we need access to resources, time to critically evaluate that evidence, and support from our workplaces. Without that, EBP risks becoming a checkbox rather than a meaningful tool for individualized care. Early on in my career, my understanding of EBP was limited. I was introduced to the basic premise of evidence-based practice while in OT school, but there wasn't a strong focus and definitely not something that felt applicable day to day. Once I graduated, it was even harder to stay engaged with evidence-based practice. There's a lack of access to journals when you're no longer in school. And while the AOTA and other professional associations provide some resources, they were limited and membership fees can be expensive to maintain. Most workplaces, there's little to no encouragement or infrastructure to support EBP. And at the time, it just felt like it was something reserved for academics and not clinicians like me just working in the field. Despite its importance, there are still many real-world barriers to implementing evidence-based practice. Many employers don't provide access to research databases or journal subscriptions, making it difficult to stay up to date. Financial support to attend national and state conferences where practitioners gain access to emerging research and tools is often limited or unavailable. And after a full day of treatment, most clinicians simply don't have the time or energy to comb through research articles. Another challenge is what I call ageism in research, the assumption that if a study is more than 5 years old, it's no longer relevant. This mindset has led to the dismissal of foundational models like air sensory integration, as well as other well-established approaches that have been developed throughout the history of our profession. On the flip side, there's a risk of overemphasizing new trends without fully understanding their context or supporting evidence. This can create inconsistent practices and disagreements about what truly constitutes best practice. And in today's digital world, misinformation spreads quickly. Anyone can publish a blog, an article, or social media video claiming to be evidence-based. But how many of us have the time or the tools to verify where that information is coming from? To make EBP more accessible and effective, we need to rethink how it's introduced and supported in practice. First, we need better access. Institutions and employers should provide clinicians with tools to engage with evidence, not just expect it. Second, we need to educate on the EBP continuum. Doesn't begin and end with new studies. It includes historical theories, evolving models, and context. Third, we can encourage lifelong learning. Journal clubs, community of practice, and mentorship can make EBP a shared, sustainable practice rather than an isolated task. And finally, we must clarify what EBP really means. It's not just about choosing between old and new. It's about integrating all sources of valid evidence in a way that best serves our clients. Looking back, my understanding of EBP has changed significantly. What once felt like a rigid academic concept now feels like a flexible and essential part of ethical practice. I've developed a greater appreciation for how EBP can bridge the gap between the tradition and innovation, between experience and evidence. My hope is that as a profession, we can continue to evolve EBP into something inclusive and accessible, something that values both the wisdom of the past and the promise of the future. Ultimately, this evolution benefits our clients, our profession, and our own growth as practitioners. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching.